At the end of the Second World War, Korea, which had formerly been occupied by the Japanese, was divided along the 38th parallel. Two separate governments were emerging. Upon the recommendation of the UN, elections were scheduled, but the North refused to participate. The South elected Singham Lee as president. The Soviet-backed North was ruled by Kim Il-sung. The Korean War began on June 25, 1950, when some 75,000 soldiers from the North Korean People's Army poured across the 38th parallel. Even so, the North Korean invasion came as an alarming surprise to American officials. As far as they were concerned, this was not simply a border dispute between two unstable dictatorships. Instead, many feared it was the first step in a communist campaign to take over the world.
On Sunday, June 25th, communist forces attacked the Republic of Korea. This attack has made it clear beyond all doubt that the international communist movement is willing to use armed invasion to conquer independent nations. An act of aggression such as this, it creates a very real danger to the security of all free nations.
It only took 2 days for President Truman to commit the United States military to the defense of southern Korea. Truman hoped to build a broad coalition against the aggressors from the north by enlisting support from the United Nations. Of course, the Soviet Union could veto any proposed action by the Security Council, but this time the Americans were in luck. The Soviets were boycotting the Security Council for refusing to admit Red China into the United Nations. As a result, the Council voted unanimously to repel the armed attack of North Korea. Many countries sent troops to defend the South, but forces beyond those of the United States and South Korea were nominal. At first, the war was a defensive one to get the communists out of South Korea, and it went badly for the Allies. The North Korean army was well disciplined, well trained, and well equipped, whereas Singham Lee's forces in the South Korean army, by contrast, were frightened, confused, and seemed inclined to flee the battlefield at any provocation. Also, it was one of the hottest and driest summers on record, and desperately thirsty American soldiers were forced to drink water from rice paddies that has been fertilized with human waste. As a result, dangerous intestinal diseases and other illness were a constant threat. By the end of the summer, President Truman and General Douglas MacArthur, the commander in charge of the Asian theater, had decided on a new set of war aims. Now, for the Allies, the Korean War was an offensive one. It was a war to liberate the North from the Communists. Caught by surprise, the Communist-backed Northern forces reeled in retreat. American-led forces from Incheon and the Pusan perimeter quickly pushed the Northern troops to the 38th parallel and kept going on. The United States saw an opportunity to create a complete, indivisible democratic Korea and pushed the Northern Army up to the Yalu River, which borders China. With anti-communism on the rise at home, Truman relished the idea of reuniting Korea. His hopes were dashed on November 27 when over 400,000 Chinese soldiers flooded across the Yalu River. In 1949, Mao Zedong had established a communist dictatorship in China, which was also then the world's most populous nation. The Chinese now sought to aid the communists in Northern Korea. At this point, China entered the war and again pushed the United Nations forces back into the south.
The Chinese had jumped in, and at that time we were in reserve. We didn't know much about it, but about a week later we had our first encounter with them. At that time we found out that the Chinese were better trained, they were smarter in their tactics, they had better firepower than the North Koreans.
Better soldiers.
During the first half of 1951, fighting stalled and armistice negotiations began in July. General MacArthur wanted to escalate the war. He sought to bomb the Chinese mainland and blockade their coast. But President Truman disagreed to this idea. He feared escalation of the conflict could lead to World War III, especially if the now nuclear-armed Soviet Union lent assistance to China. Disgruntled MacArthur took his case directly to the American people by openly criticizing Truman's approach.
A number of events have made it evident that General MacArthur did not agree with that policy. I have therefore considered it essential to relieve General MacArthur so that there would be no doubt or confusion as to the real purpose and aim of our policy.
President Truman promptly fired him for insubordination. Meanwhile, the war evolved into a stalemate with the front line corresponding more or less to the 38th parallel. Ceasefire negotiations dragged on for 2 more years beyond Truman's presidency. Finally, on July 27, 1953, an armistice was signed at Panmunjom. North Korea remained a communist dictatorship and South Korea remained under the control of Singamri. Over 37,000 Americans were killed in the conflict. 30th parallel was a line of latitude used as the pre-Korean War border. After the Korean War, the position of the border changed and the name changed to the Korean Demilitarized Zone. Thus, the demarcation line, which we even call today as the 30th parallel, is not equal to 38 degrees north. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you.